Billionaire Therapy Sessions. That's what we are going to do today. Today, we're going to talk about Kanye West. Kanye West is not crazy. He's hurting. He's lonely. He's enraged to the point where he feels numb. Kanye, I see you. And this is my therapy session with Kanye West in this edition of Billionaire Therapy Sessions. I am Kanye Corder, National Certified Counselor, and also known as a billionaire therapist. I'm specialized in financial therapy, and my mission is to alleviate human suffering associated with money by addressing mental health. It's my belief that the key is giving every human being the tools they need to have mental clarity and a sense of purpose. So, what does that mean? That means that today we're going to talk about Kanye. And I'll tell you my story about how I met Kanye, but I'll also address his pain from a more professional point of view. Now, my job is not to agree or disagree with Kanye. It's not to change his mind or to get him to be different. My job is to get down to the bottom of his pain so he can truly be himself, finally. And a lot of you think that Kanye is being himself. That's the myth that's out there. That's even the myth that he believes, but he's not being himself. In fact, who he is being is what we call his imposter self. And the imposter self is the hurt self. In self-sync therapy, what I administer, self-sync therapy says that the hurt self is the imposter and the authentic self is being protected by the imposter. And that person that you see out in the world that Kanye shows you is his imposter. It's the person that he has created to protect the authentic self. And the authentic self really never got to grow up. The authentic self got stunted at a very early age. Now, I don't know the exact age. One of the questions I would have to ask him in our therapy session is, when did his father leave? Because that is likely the triggering event. But wait, let me tell you, I just want to give you 4 of the questions that I would go deep with Kanye on, and then I'll tell you my experience personally with Kanye. So the first question that we always ask every single patient in every single self-sync therapy session is, what's going well? But why this is extremely important when it comes to Kanye is because Kanye doesn't focus on what's going well. Kanye is constantly catastrophizing. Everything is a major event for him. He constantly focuses on what's not going well. And even when things really are going well in his life, he doesn't focus on them, which brings more of what's not going well, because what you focus on expands. You know this, I know this, maybe you don't know this, but now you know. What you focus on expands. And if you're focusing on the catastrophes or what's not going well or turning everything into a catastrophe, then you'll continue to create things that aren't going well in your life. But if you're able to focus on what's going well, then you can change what's happening in your life. And Kanye is continuously focusing on what's not going well. So the first question I want to ask him, and I know that it would be difficult for him to answer this question in the beginning, but once he gets started, I believe that he's going to do very well with answering this question. And he'll have many things that are going well that he doesn't even talk about. Maybe didn't even give any time of notice himself. So that's number 1. And we go deep there. I would ask him to do at least 3. And once I get him to do 3, I know he'll take it from there because he's super talented and creative. So he'll be able to go there. Now, what I'll have to watch for is then for him to shift into the imposter of faking good. And then he'd go into, oh, how wonderful he is. But I'm not asking him to fake good. I'm just asking him to tell me what's really going well. And then I would move on to question number 2. And there may be a few questions in between, but the one that I want to get to is, what challenges are you experiencing? Now, it's likely that this question will be easy for him, very easy for him. And he'll be able to tell me tons and tons of challenges. What I'm getting down to is the pattern. So what these challenges that are you experiencing, where have you seen them before? What patterns are repeating in your life? And I put some notes here because it's likely that it's all going to come back to him not being listened to, him not being seen, not taken seriously. And again, that's going to go back to when his father did not see him, when he wasn't taken seriously. And he repeated that in his life and before he became a rapper and even becoming a rapper. And right now, I think I saw a clip. Now I don't watch any interviews before I do these billionaire therapy sessions. So I've been hearing things about Kanye and I've seen little clips, but I've recently heard something about him feeling like he's losing his connection to his colleagues. Like none of his colleagues are connecting with him anymore. And that could be very lonely, or he can feel like they're not listening to him. And when Kanye doesn't feel listened to, what he does is get louder and louder and louder and louder. Often he goes into rage and he then begins to hurt people. And what else he does is to do something wild and crazy. And so since Kanye has been diagnosed with bipolar, which I'm not going to talk about because I believe we really need to get down to the trauma. And if we address the trauma, we will see a lot of those bipolar symptoms go away. A very small part of the population actually has a chemical imbalance. And I would be curious to see, how do they test to see if Kanye has the chemical imbalance that creates bipolar? Or did they just ask a series of questions and decide that that was bipolar? Because that same series of questions, the answers to those would be very similar if we're just testing for trauma. So I tell you that because you might be experiencing something like that and you might want to check your trauma before going straight to adjusting to a diagnosis. Check your trauma. So with Kanye, I would say check your trauma, Kanye, because losing your father is a very traumatic experience. And if we don't address that, yeah, I see that he's probably addressing it lately. But if you live almost 50 years without addressing that, that hurt is so ingrained. So this was going to lead me to question number 3, because the hurt is ingrained now. And yeah, it wasn't your fault when you were 8 or 6 or 4 or whenever your father left, and when your parents got a divorce, and maybe you feel like your mom did something to push your father away, or maybe she didn't do enough to get him to get involved with you, and you were young and you couldn't do it yourself. You couldn't go knocking on his door. You didn't know where he lived. And it seemed like he didn't care, but you're not sure if maybe somebody was keeping him from you, or maybe he was acting out in the way you've acted out with Kim. So now your mom was protecting you. You don't know what happened, but it's not your fault what happened. None of it is your fault. But it now is your responsibility to heal. And it is your responsibility to take responsibility for your current actions, not whatever was happening to you when you were 4. And so there is that diagnosis. And so sometimes Kanye probably leans on that diagnosis. Well, I'm bipolar, so I can't control myself, right? Oh, I'm off my medication. But if you know you're bipolar, if you're saying you're bipolar and you need medication, then wouldn't it be your responsibility to stay on that medication? But let's say that you are on your medication and you still do things, and then you want to blame it on other people. And then those other people have triggered you or they've wronged you in some way. But even the response is your responsibility. If you react, you have made that decision to react that way. You don't have to react that way. You can master yourself and respond in a way that is healthy because you're powerful, Kanye. You've already told us that. So why are you acting like you're not? Because you are powerful. So you are so powerful that you could take responsibility for your responses and respond in a healthy way. And the way that you could do that is take responsibility for your healing. And when you heal, the version of Kanye that we are going to see is going to outshine anything he has ever done so far before. Because if he can do this while he's hurt, just imagine what he can do when he's healed. Wow. Yeah. And then there's the dishonesty. Kanye's being dishonest with himself in the sense that he knows that much of what is happening to him, he has caused. But that knowing is so down deep inside his subconscious that it's covered up and he won't allow himself to see that. There's other dishonesty that he has in the way that he approaches his relationship with like Candace Owens and Donald Trump. Those are not authentic relationships. Those are what Kanye thinks will get him some attention. It's what Kanye thinks will allow him to connect with somebody that's like him. Donald Trump, very much like him, still trying to please his father, still trying to get his father's love. I don't know what Candace Owens is. She's not a billionaire, so we won't do her interview. But it's likely that she is still trying to heal some wounds herself and that she is doing what she needs to do in order to get attention. And Kanye was who could get her attention, but neither of them is being their true, authentic self. Kanye doesn't really know his true, authentic self, which is why he can't be it. But that's a dishonesty. If he knew who he was, then maybe he could be it, but he has lied to himself and he believes that the imposter is who he is. And that dishonesty is not his fault, but it is his responsibility. So let's move on to question 4. Question 4, what would it take, Kanye? What would it take for you to feel satisfied? Like for you to feel like the world is on your side, that they are listening to you, that you do have a community, a group that is yours, that you are leading. And I don't mean leading these people who want to see you sabotage yourself. Self-sabotage is real. And that is what you're doing. Slowly but surely, you're chipping away at the foundation that you have built. And nobody can stop you. Yeah, nobody can stop you from self-sabotaging. The same way, if you healed, nobody could stop you from really, truly making a mark. And yeah, you're going to make a mark, but the legacy you'll leave, you may not be proud of, nor may your children be proud of it. But if you healed, the legacy that you could leave could be one that goes down in history. So what would it take for you to want to shift the imposter to the authentic and feel satisfied? And think about it, because you've been quite insatiable. Spending sprees show that you are insatiable. And there's a tie between your mental health and money. If you get more money, you're just going to become more mentally unstable or more mentally unwell. If you get less money, then you're going to become mentally unstable, mentally unwell until you heal. And when you're insatiable, the number one thing you want to do is spend your way to freedom. But you can't do that. Money doesn't buy freedom. I know a lot of you are going to disagree with me. Money does not buy freedom. You've got to feel free inside, and you don't, Kanye, feel free yet. And when you do, then the money is just going to be a tool to spread that freedom to others. So how would you know if you were satisfied? How would you know? How would you know if you were listened to? How would you know? What would it feel like? So right now, you're likely feeling a bunch of yucky feelings. Now, that's not a technical term, but it is a self-seek term. And the words that we say, because it's just so easy to know that you know when you feel yucky. So we don't need a bunch of jargon to describe how we feel. And because I work so much with men, successful men, sometimes they don't have the words. So we just keep it simple and we say yucky. You feel yucky. Okay, you got that yucky feeling going on. But how will you know when you feel yummy? What would it take for you to feel yummy? What are some of the words that you could associate with that yummy feeling? Maybe you would feel free. Maybe you would feel at peace. Maybe you would feel like you didn't even have to respond. Maybe you would feel listened to. And what would it feel like to feel listened to? Maybe it would be peaceful, relaxing, refreshing. Maybe it would feel like you had nothing else to say. Maybe it would feel like you would finally listen. Imagine that. So how would you know when you were satisfied? And we can all answer this question. This is not specific to Kanye. This is a question that goes deep into everyone and every experience, because all of us have a need for satisfaction, a desire for satisfaction. But today we're focused on Kanye West. But we will always focus on ourselves, because it's time for you to grow yourself daily. And sometimes the way that you grow yourself is to look at others and say, oh, I want that, or I don't want that, and get really clear on what you want or don't want in your life. And I'm going to give you more financial therapy tips, tools, and resources as we connect each week. So go ahead and like this video, share it if you did like it, and come back often. Follow this channel for more, but also follow me on TikTok, because I give little short snippets and tips and tools there. So if you're not already, if you are, let's say, if you're not already working on your healing, I might be able to refer you to someone who can help you. So if you go to presidentiallifestyle.com/GYD, stands for Grow Yourself Daily, or guide for short. So presidentiallifestyle.com/guide, fill out the form, and I'll get you connected to our guide app, and there you'll find the right healer for you. In the meantime, put your questions, like, what would you say to Kanye? I know you probably have some opinions. What am I gonna ask you to do? Because in these billionaire therapy sessions, it's not about tearing people down. It's about maybe sharing your own mental health journey, or being kind or gentle to someone. No, Kanye hasn't hurt you personally. He probably doesn't know you. And I said that I was going to share my Kanye story with you. So here you go. So, many years ago, I was in my 20s. Oh, why did I just say that? Okay, so a few years ago, I was in my 20s, and I was working at Universal Studios in Hollywood. And Kanye and his mother, Donda, came to Universal Studios. And you know the part of Universal Studios, if you've been there, where you go through the tour, you get to see the old studios and the movies that were made, and the sets that were built and all of that. So I was working there. And when I saw Kanye, I don't know, I just went up to him and I was like, oh, wow, I'm pursuing a career, not as a rapper, but as a poet. And back at this time, poetry was big, Def Poetry Jam, all of that was just Poetry Jam was like towards the end of Def Poetry Jam. There was a couple other things happening. And so I was pursuing a career as a poet, and I shared that with Kanye. And then he says, let me hear it, spit right now. So I was like, all right. And so I went, and it was like a 2-3 minute poem, and I got all the way to the end, and he was like, that was dope, gave me my props, and we shared that moment. He was kind in that moment. He was patient in that moment. He didn't have to stand in line. He was Kanye West. Of course, he had a whatever fast pass or gate A or whatever it was called back then. So he didn't have to stand in line. He could have went right and got on his ride, but he paused and he took some time to listen to my poem. He and his mother, as they were enjoying himself, he was there enjoying himself with his mother. He did not have to take the time to pour into me, because it was his mother's time. But he did listen to me, because he likes to be listened to. And that was Kanye's true, authentic self. I got a glimpse of that. And I hope you get a glimpse of that too, because Kanye is not crazy. Kanye is hurting. He's in pain. And let's help our brother heal from one human being to another. So let's wrap this up. I'm feeling like most of Kanye's pain is because of his father disappearing. He doesn't feel important. And many of us have felt like that. Many people don't feel important. They don't feel heard. And let me tell you, the number one, and you probably heard me say this before, but the number one reason people come to see me is loneliness. They don't see that. They don't say, hey, I need a therapist for loneliness. But based on the things that they say and me asking them a few questions, we get down to the cause, and the cause is loneliness. And it usually started somewhere in childhood between 0 and 7 years old. So just go back to your 0 to 7 years old and ask yourself, what did it feel like? What was I feeling back then? And then ask, what would I like to feel? Maybe you want to feel something different. During our self-sync session, Kanye will likely see the color green or the color black or the color white. Because when I do self-sync sessions, what I am getting, I don't want you to have to relive the trauma. So I'm going to ask you for symbols and colors and sometimes just single words. And these colors are associated with some of the symptoms that I believe that Kanye is experiencing. And if you're seeing some of these colors, as I mentioned before, you can go ahead and go to presidentiallifestyle.com/guide. That's GYD. And what I mean by if you're seeing some of these colors is if when you close your eyes and you just try to imagine your childhood, if the color that is coming up for you that's kind of overarching is yellow or green or red or black or purple. Purple, yeah, that's a very common one. I see purple a lot. Then you may want to start your healing process. Now, the therapist you work with won't necessarily do self-sync therapy. Most likely they won't. And you don't have to tell them what I've told you here. Allow them to do their own work, because what you are experiencing, you are not alone. You're not the only one. It is not normal to feel the way you feel. It is common, but what is normal is peace and joy, and happiness and satisfaction. And if you are open to feeling any of those things, then I would say, follow me so I can continue to pour into you. Go to presidentiallifestyle.com/guide and let's continue this conversation. And if you are a healer yourself, then you definitely want to follow me on TikTok, because I am going to give my healers something special. So thank you for joining me today. I went longer than I really wanted to. I wanted to keep this short, like 15 minutes, but I really wanted to go deep as well. So I'm glad you stayed all the way to the end. And you and I have so much to talk about. So I'll see you next week on the next Billionaire Therapy Sessions. Also, our Thought Leader Talks, and again on TikTok. So have a prosperous week ahead.